Good morning. Good morning to those on Zoom. We come this morning to celebrate, to reflect, and to worship together. And as today's theme is about moving towards an Indigenous worldview, I invite you to look for this cue card in your pew. And I will now read the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the land once inhabited by the Patuxet Wampanoag people. First Parish is committed to honoring the sovereignty of the Indigenous peoples who lost their land and their means of livelihood due to disease, war, broken treaties, massacres, forced removals, enslavement, and forced assimilation. We recognize their painful history caused by European settlement. We believe that Indigenous peoples should be the recipients of reparative action and be protected by law from further loss of land and the termination of agreements that they hold beneficial. We will support Indigenous organizations and legislation dedicated to the welfare and advancement of Native peoples. Let us take this hour together. Amen.
Thank you, Elaine. Please rise in body and spirit while Marie and Mike Haley light our chalice. Then please remain standing for the doxology.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace on our world.
Please be seated. I hope I cut away from the microphone before I started singing. Wouldn't want any of you to have to endure that. Good morning. My name is Donna Savicki. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm today's worship associate, and it is both my honor and my pleasure to share the pulpit with Claire Karl Müller. I've known Claire for a number of years, but this is actually the first time we met in person, so it's a real pleasure. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, for this hour, you are part of this congregation, and we are very happy to have you here. I hope you'll join us after the service for coffee hour, which can be reached through the door to my left. Just follow the crowd after the service. If you're new to First Parish, please feel free to take a red mug so that we may give you a warm First Parish welcome. You don't have to if you don't want to. I hope you will. I have just a couple of announcements. I've been asked to announce that tickets will be on sale during coffee hour for the service auction, which is on, where's Jim? February 8th, is that right? March 8th, sorry. And they need people to bake. So if you're interested in doing that as your donation or part of your donation, that'd be wonderful. I also want to bring your attention to the fact that I believe Tom Shades, Tom will be holding the second of his series on UUism. Today, I think you're focusing on the Black experience or the interaction. Is that correct, Tom? Last week's was wonderful, and this week should be very good too. I hope as many of you will stay as possible. As you can see, our interim minister, Reverend Susan Milner, has today off. Serving in her place, as mentioned, is Claire Karl Müller. Claire Karl is coordinator of the statewide climate justice coalition, Mass Power Forward, which they co-founded in 2015. They are also the staff for Indigenous Solidarity at UU Mass Action, which is how I got to know Claire Karl. They are fifth-generation Germanic settler to Eastern Massachusetts and identify as white, middle-class, non-binary, small-fat, queer organizer. Their values are curiosity, compassion, truth, and people power. They feel called to work with other white middle-class folks on racial, economic, and climate justice. Claire Karl joined the team at UU Mass Action in 2020. They have organized at the local, state, and federal level on climate and environmental justice since 2007, winning victories to stop pipelines, transition coal-powered power plants to solar, and build community. And now, Elaine, if you will start us off, we'll sing the children out. We've come to the time in our service for joys and concerns. For anyone who would like to share, please come forward, form a line to my left.
Hi, I'm lighting can you even hear me? Okay. As most of you know, we have had an Afghan family living in our parsonage for the past 3 years. When they arrived here and were at the airport in Kabul, Maruf, who's the dad over there, brother brought the family to the airport. And during that time, he met with someone and a bomb went off and he got separated from his son Hilal, who ended up here in Duxbury with the Wazirwals. So we've been trying very hard to get his family here, and there was a lot of hope that that was going to happen. But as you know, things are not so good bringing people into this country right now. So my candle is for Hilal and his family. He has, yeah, so.
We don't have any candles today, so. Something always goes wrong, right? But that's what makes it memorable.
Good morning. My name is Jean Penven. This is my 49th wedding anniversary, and because that means we're entering our 50th year, we are going to be celebrating our 50th year the whole year. We're never sure if my spouse is going to make it from one day to the next, but he's keeping on, and we're going to be doing this for the entire 50th year. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Carol Robison. My pronouns are she and her. I almost don't know where to start, but disaster has struck my older sister's family. Her daughter passed away a little over a week ago from pneumonia. She was 60 years old, one of these really vibrant, lively, just wonderful human beings. Bert and Connie had 3 kids. They have 3 kids. They've all gathered and they are planning the memorial service. They live in Lake Jackson, Texas, south of Houston. As if that weren't enough, my sister's husband, Bob, was hospitalized this week with severe back pain. I don't think he's ever going home. He's 91. So my sister, who is 83 and lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, is facing the loss of both her daughter and her husband. I am packed. I'm going somewhere, not sure which first, probably Arizona, but please keep us in your thoughts and prayers.
Okay, Kathy, you can have another.
I forgot to say, the reason I got up here initially was to say that we're having a letter writing activity upstairs for the family, because we're hoping there might be some way that we can get Hilal's family here. So there's a table up in the coffee hour.
In the absence of candles, for which I apologize, let's just acknowledge all of the joys and concerns that have gone unspoken, but that we're holding in our hearts. Will our ushers please come forward for the offering?
Good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's a real pleasure. I feel I should out myself as being born and raised in Duxbury, and it's very pleasing to be here. My parents are here in the front row, and I plan to visit my grandparents afterwards. My name is Claire Karl, and I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Movement Building Director at UU Mass Action. If you don't know UU Mass Action, we are your statewide nonprofit dedicated to providing pathways to justice so we can live our values in action. Today, I want to talk about some of the problems facing us and how I believe solidarity with Indigenous people is a core antidote. And I'll also share some key ways that this work is happening here in Massachusetts. First, I need to ground into who I am, a settler colonist here on Turtle Island, the real name for the so-called United States. And based on my research and DNA testing of my grandparents, I am at least 11 kinds of European. Irish, Welsh, Scottish, English, German, Danish, Norwegian, Polish, and some Balkans. Any cousins in the room? I see you. And since I was a child, I've been attracted to Native American culture. I have sometimes felt like I had my nose pressed up against the glass of indigeneity, that there was something there that drew me in. I can still picture where in the mall, in the Independence Mall in Kingston in the 1990s, was the store that sold the dream catchers and the tapestries and the spirit animals. I always wanted to go to that store. I think there's a reason for this, that there's something still whole there that I gravitated towards, that through white assimilation, my European ancestry somehow lost some core piece. As an adult, and as an organizer working on political causes, I've come to honestly identify that I'm pretty unhappy under this status quo. Colonialist, racial capitalism. At times I'm lonely, I'm stressed about money, my health, my family, the climate, the state of democracy. Sorry, gotta go. Right? Like, it's a lot. Anybody else stressed by those things as well? Thank you. It's so much easier to name that together, to face that in a group. At UU Mass Action, we define the root of all of those problems facing us as systems of oppression, colonialist, racial capitalism. And I know these are kind of jargony words, so let me unpack them a little bit. These are the systems, that never-ending, profit-driven, greedy extraction of wealth and exploitation of land and people. And it's made possible, it has been let to spiral desperately out of control because of oppression, because of anti-Blackness, white supremacy, where some people, some lands are considered less than, more okay to exploit. We see this in Massachusetts, where low-income and communities of color are targeted for pollution. And this system, colonialist racial capitalism, what a mouthful, it's the dominant system on our planet at this time. But it's not the only one. Last year, I read this book, which I brought with me in case you want to take a picture of it at coffee hour. And it's called Restoring the Kinship Worldview. Indigenous voices introduce 28 precepts for rebalancing life on planet Earth. Now, there are an estimated 370 million Indigenous people spread out across 70 countries worldwide. And they are by no means a monolithic group living exactly the same. That would be weird. But there are common threads that the authors of this book touch upon. Threads that I think make an Indigenous worldview the antidote to the current dominant worldview. One chapter of this book that struck me and has stayed with me is called Generosity as a Way of Life. Did you know that when Christopher Columbus arrived and met the Taino people, he was so confused by the generosity of the Native Americans he encountered and later murdered and enslaved, that he literally wrote a letter back to King Ferdinand of Spain, and he wrote, quote, "They're so naive. They're so free with their possessions that no one who has not witnessed it would believe it. When you ask them for something, they never say no." I get goosebumps every time I read that passage. This is a moment where a taking mindset meets a giving mindset. And he's astonished. He can't wrap his head around it. Can I have that? Can I have that? What about that and that and that and that? Not long after I read this chapter, I was up in New Hampshire with my partner. We're skiers, and after we came down from the mountain, we like to walk on Main Street and window shop and just enjoy the small town atmosphere. It had gotten dark and colder, and so I put on a hat that I had recently gotten. And as we're walking down, I see a cute little shop. It's got, pottery and other fun tchotchkes. We walk in, and as soon as we step inside, the woman behind the counter, her face lights up. And she says, "Where did you get that hat? It's gorgeous." And I'm a little taken aback by her reaction. Like, she's really into it. And I just say something like, somewhere in Boston. But in that moment, the wheels are turning in my head, and I start to take it off, and I say to her, I think you should have it. And I'll tell you, in that moment began the most awkward dance of me trying to give it to her and her going, no, I couldn't possibly. And then I start saying things like, it's not even my color. I don't even like it that much. Eventually, I convince her to take it. And I can tell that she's really pleased. And I walk out of that store feeling like I'm on cloud 9, like I've lived into my values. Those of us who have been raised in this dominant taker worldview, we are unused to generosity. And yet when I read these accounts, it sounds so beautiful. Rituals where the leaders of a community are measured, their leadership is measured by their generosity, where they literally throw celebrations and give all of their possessions away. Can you imagine if the person in the White House was measured by his generosity? I like to imagine in Massachusetts based entirely on generosity. If you need affordable housing, you got it. If you need healthy food, childcare, public transportation, medical leave, disability support, done. What a relief that would be to know if the challenges you or your loved ones face, that our collective, our common wealth would be there to catch you. And I want to be honest, some of this culture lives amongst us. It's irrepressibly human to be generous. I think of our congregations as one of the places that I see this most clearly. When one of us is facing challenging times, we try to be generous. A couple years ago, I actually knew of someone in this congregation who was facing a challenging time. She had broken her leg, but she'd also recently acquired a puppy. Yeah, not great timing. And when I reached out, I said, is there anything I can do to support you? She said, I'm good. My congregation's got me. People have signed up to walk my dog. I'm taken care of. And I remember in that moment being like, yes, UUs are the best. We're so good. Living true values, these irrepressibly human values. What would it look like if that was Massachusetts, how we operated as a whole? If that kind of generosity were built into our public policy? A Dakota elder, Ella Deloria, is quoted in this chapter in the book, contrasting the two systems. She says, "The aim of the old Dakota economic system and that of the white man's are one and the same, incongruous as that sounds when we compare the two systems for achieving it. Security, that's the aim. Food, clothing, shelter, an old age free from want. All peoples need that. It's what they struggle for in their respective ways. But the two systems in question are irreconcilable. They go counter to each other. One says, in effect, get now, all you can, as you can, for yourself, and so ensure security for yourself. If all will do this, then everyone will be safe. And this system depends on things, primarily. The other said, give to others. Let gifts flow freely out, and they will flow freely back to you again. In the universal and endless stream of giving, this is bound to be so. And that system is dependent on human beings, friends, relatives." Every time I read that passage and I get to the part about giving freely, I always have this sensation of like, oh my God, that sounds amazing, but scary. Will it be true? But given the future that we face, it's easy for me to choose which system I want to live in. And here in Massachusetts, we have a decent ways to go towards a full society grounded in Indigenous worldview. But things are also changing rapidly. UU Mass Action is part of the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda Coalition. That coalition has leadership from the North American Indian Center of Boston, United American Indians of New England, as well as several tribes. As I'm sure you know, Massachusetts is one of the ground zeros for settler colonialism in the United States. The Massachusetts people, the Wampanoag people, the Nipmuc, they've been struggling to survive for more than 400 years. but they're here, and they're doing the work. As part of the Mass Indigenous legislative agenda, we have 5 policies that we would like to see turn into law. And I'll run through them quickly. They're really no-brainers. The first 3 have to do with our public education system. Number 1, consult with Indigenous tribes to create a curriculum for our public schools that will teach accurately about their cultures. Wow, what an amazing idea. Growing up in this public school system, I'm not sure that I knew that the Wampanoag people existed past Thanksgiving. Wouldn't it be amazing if we taught our children more? Number 2, anecdotally, we believe that Indigenous youth in our public school systems are not doing well. We want to establish a commission that would look into their educational outcomes and then make recommendations to make them better. Number 3, stop using Indigenous people as mascots. There are more than 24 public schools in Massachusetts that still use Indigenous names and imagery as mascots. Number 4 has to do with cultural objects that universities, institutions still have that were stolen from Indigenous people. This policy would close a loophole that would not allow these objects to be sold at auction, to close them off as assets. They are things that need to be rematriated. And lastly, number 5, let's establish Indigenous Peoples' Day statewide already. So these are no-brainers, repairs that need to be made in our community for Indigenous justice. We have to stop the harm, even as we move towards our vision of a generous future together. And I want to be really clear, when I advocate for moving towards an Indigenous worldview, I do not mean going backwards. There's still going to be hot showers and the internet. People can often confuse indigeneity with primitivism, but that's just another part of our colonial programming. And generosity is just one of the 28 chapters in here. There's also gratitude, sacredness of truth, humor, interdependence. You can find basically all of our UU values reflected in here. It's been over 500 years since Columbus arrived, and we are on our way to healing that harm. So let's keep going. All our social justice campaigns at UMass Action are linked to this vision, and our work to heal the harm with Native American people is central to that. Our 5 campaigns are climate and environmental justice, housing justice, immigrant justice, Indigenous justice, and decarceration. And as we face the onslaught of federal fascism together, I want to invite you to join us in making a strong stand here in Massachusetts. Our annual Advocacy Day this year is Tuesday, April 8th, and I hope you consider joining us to lobby your state elected officials to pass these laws and our other ones. During coffee hour, I will offer you an interest card. You don't have to take it, but you can. You can join our newsletter, learn more about these campaigns and the work that we're doing. And then maybe in the not too distant future, the next time I offer my hat to someone, it won't be quite so awkward. Thank you. Now please rise in body or spirit for our hymn number 309 in the gray hymnal, Earth is Our Homeland.
extinguish our chalice. And please read with me the chalice extinguishing words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are the children of life's longing for itself. Out of the infinite, we come for these brief days, not just to grieve, but to reimagine a way for ourselves and for all of those yet to come. Give us the chance to grow into what we can become. Souls sensitive to beauty and hearts open to creativity. Do not shrink and wither us with fear, but quicken the springs of courage within us, now and in the days and months to come. Amen.